Coming up on The World Today. Afghan forces order civilians to leave city under Taliban siege. Report finds that New York governor sexually harassed women. And head of Belarus exiles group found dead in Ukraine. Welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We begin in Afghanistan, where residents of a besieged city have been urged to evacuate ahead of an army operation against the Taliban. General Sami Sadat, who is leading the battle against the Taliban in the southern province of Helmand, called on people to leave its capital, Lashkargah, as soon as possible. The UN says at least 40 civilians have been killed in Lashkargah in the past day amid intense fighting. The Taliban are reported to have captured most of the city, but the fighting is continuing and government forces have vowed not to let it fall into militant hands.
The Taliban has ramped up its offensive in recent weeks and gained more ground.
Well, the VOA's correspondent Ayaz Gal was at Pakistan's Afghan border earlier today and joins us now on the program. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm driving back to Islamabad from the border region, so I hope you have a good connection right now.
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so let me just start by first saying, if you could describe to us the situation on ground at the border, what did you gather today?
Well, primarily the reason the Pakistani military arranged this trip today for reporters to show them the situation on this side of the border, because there are worries that with this conflict intensifying inside Afghanistan, there could be a spillover of violence into Pakistan, and there could be a new influx of Afghan refugees towards Pakistan. So basically they were showing the reporters how the arrangements are being made to protect the border and to ensure that if there is a refugee influx, how to deal with the situation. So that's, this side of the border. But on the other side, obviously, things are very bad. And, in the last 2-3 days, the country Afghanistan has seen one of the worst clashes between the Taliban insurgents and the Afghan government security forces.
Residents have been told to get out of Helmand while they still can. This is a very dramatic move from the army coming after one of the fiercest days of fighting. With fighting still raging, how are they to achieve this? Are they being offered any help?
Well, it seems that both sides are using media, social media, to do sort of this propaganda against each other, because the kind of situation which prevails currently in Lashkargah, the capital of Helmand province, it's really not possible for residents to really get out of the city, because most of the city is either controlled by the Taliban currently, or there have been severe clashes ongoing for the last at least 2 days. So that announcement from the Afghan government side seems to sort of create some kind of a pressure on the Taliban, but it doesn't seem to have changed anything. And just as we are speaking right now, the Taliban apparently, allegedly have conducted a major suicide car bombing in the national capital, Kabul. And the target of that attack was the Afghan defense minister, although the reports we have just received is that the minister was not at home, apparently, at the time of the attack. But this bombing, followed by gunfire, that siege is still continuing.
So with the Taliban reporters who have captured most of the city, is there any hope left for the city? What are the authorities saying at this time?
Well, the Afghan president and the Afghan security forces leaders have promised to evict the Taliban from Lashkargah. But we know that this is the province where almost all the districts have been under control of the Taliban for the last several years. So with Taliban reaching inside the city, evicting them, kicking them out of the city would be a big challenge. So let's see what happens. But apparently, in the battlefield, Taliban definitely have the upper hand.
And in recent days, the U.S. military has intensified air raids across the country in a bid to stem advance from the Taliban. Is that proving effective at all?
Well, it hasn't really deterred the Taliban from their battlefield advances, and the intensification in the conflict in Helmand and surrounding province suggests that those strikes have instead upset or maybe angered the Taliban, and we have seen more attacks from the insurgent side. So, and this Kabul suicide car bombing that just has happened suggests that Taliban might have returned to their routine insurgent attacks even in urban centers to reflect or to demonstrate their anger against these U.S. airstrikes that they say were conducted in violation of the agreement that the Taliban have with the United States.
Thank you, Ayaz, for that update. The VOA's Ayaz Gul speaking to us from Islamabad. Moving on to other stories, the head of a group helping people who have fled Belarus has been found dead near his home in neighboring Ukraine. Vitaly Shishov's body was found hanged in a park in Kiev a day after he failed to return home from a jog. Police have opened a murder inquiry into the case.
Belarusian activist Vitaly Shishov was found hanged in a park near his home in Kiev. Ukrainian police have launched an investigation. They say they're investigating whether he'd been killed and his death made to look like a suicide. Shishov led a Kiev-based organization that helps Belarusians fleeing persecution. He was reported missing by his partner on Monday when he didn't come back home from a run. Ukraine, Poland and Lithuania have become havens for Belarusians during a crackdown by President Alexander Lukashenko following a disputed election last year. Shishov led the Belarusian House in Ukraine group, which says it helps Belarusians find accommodation, jobs and legal advice. His friend and fellow activist Yuri Lebedev believes he'd been killed by the Belarusian special services. Mr. Shishov's death is the latest incident to prompt international scrutiny of President Lukashenko's authoritarian government. At the Tokyo Olympics, sprinter Kristina Timanowskaya was granted a humanitarian visa by Poland after refusing her team's order to fly back to Belarus early. In March, the IOC refused to recognize the election of Lukashenko's son Viktor as head of the country's Olympic Committee. Both father and son were banned from attending the Games in December. It says it's investigating the latest development.
We have decided to launch, not surprisingly, a formal investigation, which will be led by the IOC administration. We need to establish the full facts. We need to hear everyone involved. That obviously can take time. And in the meantime, obviously, our first concern is for the athlete. We have asked for a report from the NOC today. We requested it yesterday. We want it today.
The incident has focused attention on Belarus, where police have cracked down on dissent following a wave of protests triggered by an election last year, which the opposition says was rigged to keep Lukashenko in power. The Belarusian authorities have characterized anti-government protesters as criminals or violent revolutionaries backed by the West, and described the actions of law enforcement agencies as appropriate and necessary.
Meanwhile, Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanskaya says a non-violent transition to democracy from President Lukashenko is possible in the former Soviet Republic. He says she won an August 9 presidential election, but the president, who has ruled Belarus since 1994, said he won. She fled to Lithuania after a crackdown on protesters that followed the contested election.
I absolutely believe in non-violent transition of the power. When we'll put enough pressure on the regime, there will be no other way out, only start dialogue with civil society. regime shouldn't talk to West, shouldn't talk to East, conversation between regime and people of Belarus. This is what we want, and this is possible. We believe in this. I really believe that Belarus can be a success story of nonviolent transition of power.
In the United States, an investigation into New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has found that he sexually harassed women, several of them, including employees at his office. Announcing the results of the inquiry, New York Attorney General Letitia James said Mr. Cuomo had violated state and federal laws. Last year, Mr. Cuomo was accused of sexual misconduct by several women. He has denied touching anyone inappropriately and rejected calls from fellow Democrats to stand down. The report is the result of a months-long inquiry that saw investigators speak to nearly 200 people, including some of those who made complaints against the governor.
The independent investigation has concluded that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women and in doing so violated federal and state law. Specifically, the investigation found that Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed current and former New York State employees by engaging in unwelcome and non-consensual touching and making numerous offensive comments of a suggestive and sexual nature that created a hostile work environment for women. The investigators independently corroborated and substantiated these facts through interviews and evidence, including contemporaneous notes and communications. This evidence will be made available to the public along with the report. This investigation was started after a number of women publicly alleged that they had been sexually harassed by Governor Cuomo. They reviewed more than 74,000 pieces of evidence, including documents, emails, texts, audio files, and pictures. These interviews and pieces of evidence reveal a deeply disturbing yet clear picture.
We'll have more on the story after the break as we join our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird. Plus, HRW reports saying some officials saw risk of Beirut blast but did nothing about it. In a moment, do stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. We're continuing our coverage of the sexual scandal against the New York Governor, Andrew Cuomo, and our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Maria, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
So what more can you tell us about this development and the accusations leveled against the governor?
Well, these accusations, I think, are some that people have been anticipating for quite some time now. I think the question was this because President Trump felt that Governor Cuomo was against him. Was this something stirred up by the Trump administration? And I think now that we're 5 months after the initial investigation and we're several months into the Biden administration, it is clear this is much deeper than a Republican-Democratic issue. And we know that many Democrats have called for the resignation of Governor Cuomo. And so we're now in a position where women have obviously been violated, and this has been obviously confirmed through the investigation. The question now is going to be, are there going to be any criminal charges brought forth? And most importantly, what is going to be done to address this culture that clearly exists within the workplace of the governor's office and senior ranking officials within that office? Because we know there was one woman that has claimed and reported that once she let people know what was happening to her, that she received retaliation not only from the governor but his senior officials.
And so Governor Cuomo had denied touching anyone inappropriately and had also rejected calls from fellow Democrats to stand down. With the finding of this inquiry, is it likely to be forced to step down?
You're correct. This could lead to him being called to step down and being requested to step down and it no longer be voluntary. And so that is going to be, we're going to see that coming out in a couple of days from now to see if there'll be any criminal charges brought forth and what will be the actions of the Attorney General for the state of New York. And so she will begin to probably start processing all that now that she has made an announcement about the findings of the investigation.
And how has the President Joe Biden reacted to this?
Well, this is all very new from the standpoint of it's just been earlier today, and we're still about midday on the East Coast. And so most likely you will hear things later on this afternoon if he decides at all to speak on this issue. Now that the investigation is over, it might be that he will wait until there's further information from the state attorney before he makes any comments.
Thanks a lot, Mariette. Our correspondent, Mariette Bird, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Let's move on to other stories. A report released by Human Rights Watch has concluded there was strong evidence to suggest some Lebanese officials knew about and tactically accepted the lethal risks posed by ammonium nitrate stored at the Beirut port before the fatal blast there on August the 4th last year. The organization called for a United Nations investigation into the explosion, which was caused by the chemicals stored unsafely at the port for years and killed more than 200 people, injured thousands, and destroyed a lot of major parts of the capital. The report by the International Rights Watchdog contained over 700 pages of findings and documents. Its investigation also concluded there was evidence that multiple Lebanese authorities were criminally negligent under Lebanese law.
Prime Minister Hassan Diab was made aware of the ammonium nitrate twice. He was first informed on June 3, while Diab's advisor was at the private dinner that Saliba was also at. While Diab and Saliba both dispute the circumstances by which it happened, both of them have confirmed to Human Rights Watch that the Prime Minister learned about the ammonium nitrate on June 3 via phone. Caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab told us that on the same evening, he requested that state security finalize and send him their report within days, but Saliba told us that Diab did not ask for such a report. Diab then told us, "I then forgot about it, and nobody followed up. There are disasters every day."
Nigeria's Consul General in South Africa is looking to the Nigerian government and citizens who can to help support those who lost their businesses in the recent civil unrest in South Africa. Nigerians are among the many business owners in the country struggling to pick up the pieces after nearly 2 weeks of violent looting and attacks on businesses and other establishments in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provinces. Although the South African government has set aside 3.9 billion rand to support the small and medium-scale businesses, many foreign-owned businesses are worried that help will still be far from them. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty De Beer, reports.
South Africa counts the cost of the many days of looting and arson attacks on several businesses in 2 provinces in the country. Many who are still worried about where to go or what to do next are some of the small and medium-sized owned businesses, especially those owned by foreign nationals. Here we're in Denver, an industrial area in Johannesburg, where we're here to see what is left of L&K auto panel beaters, owned by a 46-year-old Nigerian, Lukman Alade, who said he lost close to 9 million rand in looted property and then in the arson attack.
I just got a call around 1 o'clock in the midnight that, hey, my son has been looting. So I came out. When I came here, I saw that it's not only looting, there's a fire. And they burned all the car inside here, almost 54 cars. So that's what we see that day.
Lukman Alade is just one of the many affected Nigerian business owners. In KwaZulu-Natal, the second affected province, the stories are no less heartbreaking.
That suffered it cuts across all nationals, not just Nigerians. Many Nigerians lost their businesses. They were burnt down, some in exchange businesses. A very pitiable case. again is a certain Nigerian, interestingly married to an Indian South African. He did not only run the business, but also ran some kind of like a mini warehouse where some of the hawkers on the street will come store things in his place. So all those warehouse, all those things that they came to keep in his place overnight, they took this they took every day. They took everything, destroyed his own businesses, his own wares, and everything that he was doing. And those people are insisting that he must also restore their goods.
Armed with a list of Nigerian businesses either looted and burnt or just looted, Nigeria's Consul General in Johannesburg, Abdul Malik Ahmed, is reaching out for help on their behalf.
So we call upon the Nigerian government and well-meaning Nigerians to come to their aid. You know, the records we have are actually conservative because most of them were not even willing to divulge, you know, their losses because of their frustration. They said even if they did, nobody's going to come to their aid. But we continue to reassure them that, you know, we are going to prevail and present their case to government, appropriate quarters.
But here in South Africa, 3.9 billion rand has been set aside to help. And government says foreign and locally owned businesses will be helped if they meet conditions.
We are looking at providing what we call blended finance, which is 60% grant and then 40% loan. We try to make the requirements very, very simple, but we have to make sure that we are also still compliant with SARS. We are engaging with SARS. We want to make sure that we also have businesses that are formalized, because we cannot support people who don't want to be known, because we have to account at the end of the day, because we're utilizing taxpayers' money.
Lukman Alade confirms he's been reached somewhat.
Yeah, they came here, they gave us some form to fill, like claim something, so we're still expecting them. We don't know what's going to happen, you know, but we can't wait for them. We just need to move forward to start doing our job back.
Whether help will eventually come, many remain hopeful. For now, Lukman is literally picking up the pieces of what's left of his business to start again at a totally different location, armed with only hope and his 14-year-old daughter's words.
Well, that thing happened that day when I'm about to give up. It's my daughter just told me, no, Daddy, don't worry, you will do it again.
From Denver, Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Authorities in the Chinese city of Wuhan will begin testing its entire population after a handful of positive coronavirus cases were detected there. Wuhan has recorded 7 locally transmitted cases, the first local infections in more than a year. Here's our global update.
China's Wuhan city will test all 12 million residents for the coronavirus. That's after the place where it emerged in late 2019 confirmed its first domestic cases of the highly transmissible Delta variant. Wuhan had reported no local coronavirus cases since May 2020, but on Monday, authorities confirmed 3 new cases of the Delta variant. Over in Japan, a Tokyo hospital director warns that Tokyo is on the edge of facing a medical collapse if more beds to treat COVID-19 patients are not secured immediately. Japan has seen a sharp increase in coronavirus cases. Tokyo, which had a record high of 4,058 new infections on Saturday, had another 3,709 cases over the past 24 hours. Australia's most populous state, New South Wales, has reported nearly 200 new coronavirus cases as the country enters its second month of battling a Delta variant outbreak. Authorities say of the new cases, at least 50 spent time in the community while infectious. Sydney's lockdown has been extended and some 300 army personnel have been going door to door to ensure people who have tested positive are also isolating at their homes. Health workers and volunteers from Mumbai's local authority have conducted a door-to-door COVID-19 vaccination campaign, inoculating vulnerable people who are unable to go to vaccination centres. The measure comes as Maharashtra state eased COVID-19 restrictions in more districts, including in the financial capital of Mumbai, after a steady decline in cases.
That's the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers.